Chapter 11. Checkmate. It happened without ceremony. No long decline. No drawn-out warning. No slow goodbye that lets the mind rehearse grief in advance. 1 minute she was fine, practical, present herself. The next she wasn't. Days. Not weeks, not months, days. And just like that, the constant was gone. This wasn't the kind of loss that arrives dramatically. It didn't come roaring. It came like the ground quietly giving way beneath a foot that stepped there 1,000 times before. Familiar, trusted, solid, until suddenly it isn't. Danny didn't have time to brace. There was no psychological scaffolding, no ritual preparation, no narrative arc, just absence. And this is where the universe stops whispering. Because until now, every lesson Danny had been given came through people, through snake pressure, dog boundaries, dragon mirrors, through chaos that wore human faces and human voices. This one didn't. This one came clean, unavoidable, unarguable, untouchable. No one to blame, no one to negotiate with, no way to intellectualize it into something manageable. The anchor was gone. The woman who could see through every mask, who regulated the storm simply by being nearby, who held Pip's world steady when everything else shook, who made fatherhood possible when Danny himself was stretched thin, gone. And with her passing, something fundamental locked into place. Because grief like this doesn't create chaos, it creates gravity. The kind that pulls everything else into alignment, whether you're ready or not. This was the final calibration, the universe stepping in where people could no longer reach. And now, only now, was Danny actually ready, ready for Lee to return one last time. Not as romance, not as hope, not as chaos for its own sake, but as a final pressure point in a cycle that had been building for years. Because the snake monkey's role was never meant to last. Seduction can open a door, but it cannot finish a lesson. That requires familiarity, history, shared weight. It requires a snake dog. And this time, the snake dog wasn't arriving to disrupt Danny's life. She was arriving to close a loop, to push out what no longer belonged, to burn off the last illusion, to finish the work that had been started long before either of them understood what they were carrying. The child had already been lost. The civilian had already been stripped away. The crown had already been set aside. Now the final attachment had been severed by the universe itself. There was nothing left to protect him from the truth, and nothing left to stop the cycle from ending exactly where it was always meant to. And this time, Danny wasn't alone. That matters. Because when his mom died, something different happened than every other collapse before it. The floor didn't vanish completely. The walls didn't cave in. The lights didn't go out. People stepped forward, not dramatically, not loudly, not with speeches or savior complexes. They just showed up. Scott, tiger, solid, present, guarding the perimeter without needing to be asked. The kind of strength that doesn't posture or explain itself. It just stands where it's needed and doesn't move. Tommy, the dragon dog, still, watching the door, making sure Danny didn't disappear into himself. Ellen, snake dragon, seeing what Danny couldn't see yet, naming patterns without forcing conclusions. Cat, another snake dragon of his own generation, close enough to feel it, distant enough to stay clear. Annie, sheepdog, quiet, grounding, reminding him how to stand with grief. Autumn, rat horse, practical care, momentum, pulling him forward when grief tried to root him to the spot. They didn't organize themselves. They didn't need to. They had been orbiting this moment for years without knowing why. Waiting without waiting. Positioned without instruction. This was the rally. This was the line holding while the center broke. And it worked. For a moment. But there was still one piece that hadn't fallen into place. One force that couldn't be replaced by friendship, loyalty, or support. Lee. And she didn't come back for closure. She didn't come back to soothe. She didn't come back to help him heal. She came back like a fucking sledgehammer, like a 10-ton truck hitting what was left of the structure at speed. The universe had already landed the blow. That was the hit that knocked him flat. Her role wasn't to knock him down. It was to make sure he stayed there long enough for the lesson to burn in. No softness, no mercy, no detours. This wasn't about love or hate anymore. It wasn't even about relationship. It was about completion. The snake dog doing exactly what the snake dog does when the universe has already decided the outcome, holding him in the fire, making sure there was no way to stand back up unchanged, because this time there would be no rebuilding around the wound. This time, whatever came next would have to be built after it. And this is where the real realization begins to surface. Then he starts to understand, not intellectually, not his theory, but something that hits him in the chest. That Lee was never meant to be the moon. She was meant to tear down everything that was blocking the view of it. She wasn't there to sit on the lunar seat. She was there to knock down the wall that had been built in front of it, to dismantle the framework from the inside out, to strip away habits, identities, old crowns, old vows, old constructions that once made sense but no longer fit the sky they were under. This wasn't cruelty, it was karmic demolition. Brick by brick, Lee pulled the structure apart, not so Danny would be left with nothing, but so that nothing false could remain standing. Once the dust settled, once the old materials lay scattered across the floor as rubble instead of architecture, that's when Danny finally saw it. The lunar glow. Not imagined, not symbolized, not forced. The moon was already there, quietly shining down on the wreckage, illuminating what was usable, what was broken beyond repair, and what was missing entirely. And for the first time, the echo changed. It wasn't just a hum anymore. It wasn't background noise or distant longing. It became a melody, recognizable, familiar, something his nervous system knew before his mind caught up, and whatever was coming next wouldn't be constructed from salvaged stone. By this point, Danny had already been stripped down layer by layer. First, the child, not literally erased, but the idea of innocence as protection, the belief that goodness alone keeps you safe, that if you care enough, try hard enough, love hard enough, the world will meet you halfway. That illusion went early. It had to. And Cain opened his eyes to it. Then the civilian was taken, the version of Danny who believed he could live quietly inside other people's systems, pay the rent, follow the rules, keep his head down, trust that stability would be granted if he behaved correctly, that skin couldn't survive the fire. Lee burned that one away completely. Then the crown was stripped, the title, the role, the sense of authority borrowed from circumstance, momentum, admiration, or necessity. Because a crown worn before the body beneath it is ready becomes a weight, not a symbol. And it was the snake monkey that proved it. And Danny had been holding it together on willpower alone. But the mother? That's different. The mother isn't a role. She isn't an identity. She isn't a skin you can shed. Psychologically, the mother represents unconditional anchoring. The last place where you are allowed to exist without proving anything. The final witness who remembers you before you learn how to survive. As long as she lived, part of Danny was still being held, not rescued, not protected from pain, held. And in the architecture of the psyche, especially a dragon Capricorn, that anchor quietly absorbs pressure you don't even realize you're leaning on. So why was she taken? Because the pattern was closing. Because Danny was no longer allowed to build around himself, no longer allowed to fall back into being someone's son when the world became too heavy. The universe doesn't remove the mother to punish. It removes her when the last remaining external regulator has to be internalized. This wasn't lost as cruelty. It was lost as completion. The child gone, so he could no longer hide in innocence. The civilian gone, so he could no longer retreat into compliance. The crown gone, so he could no longer confuse role with identity. And now the mother gone, so there was nowhere left to lean except into himself. That's the final severance, not abandonment, not erasure, initiation. From this point on, Danny isn't held by the world. He has to become the one who holds. And that's why this loss lands differently than all the others, because it isn't asking him to endure, it's asking him to stand, alone. And that's when the universe places him at the edge, not gently, not ceremonially, at the cliff, at the precipice, at the exact point where there is no railing left to grip. Cain nudged him there first, a pressure, a suggestion, a destabilization. The snake showing him the edge existed at all. Snake Monkey seduced him closer, not with malice, with curiosity, with likeness, with possibility. She made the fall look survivable. She made the drop feel like flight. And Snake Dog Drop kicked him off the edge. No romance, no delay, no soft landing, because her role was never to walk him back from it. The truth is harsher than that. The snakes were never there to save him. They were there to get him to the edge. Danny didn't want that edge. He felt it long before he ever saw it, and he resisted it with everything he had. A dragon doesn't step willingly into free fall. Cain tried first, the nudging, the prompting, the quiet just try it pressure. But by then, Danny was too solid, too anchored, too stubborn. Cain couldn't push that dragon any further. The snake had done its job, exposed the path, but the dragon wouldn't walk it. Then came Lee, and that snake dog was force. Too much force. She had to beat the civilian out of him, break the illusion that brute endurance, duty, and compliance could still carry him forward. But brute force alone couldn't do it. Dragons don't fall just because you shove them. So the pattern escalated. In comes Snake Monkey. Seduction, not violence, not confrontation, possibility, curiosity, the illusion of ease. The Snake Monkey doesn't push you to the edge. It makes you forget why you were afraid of it. And all the while, in the background, the dog was there, snapping, holding ground, closing escape routes. The dog doesn't shove the dragon forward. It makes damn sure he can't go backwards. Boundary, consequence, no retreat. The snake's on the front line, the dog's in the rear, a dragon trapped between inevitabilities. And still Danny resisted. He is not weak. His reluctance wasn't fear. It was power refusing collapse. So in the end, the snakes couldn't finish it. The dogs couldn't finish it. The dragon wouldn't step. That's when the universe intervened. It put him there, on the edge. And it took his mother, not as punishment, not as cruelty, as placement. Because once she was gone, there was no anchor left to hold him away from the fall. No retreat, no handhold, no shelter. The universe didn't push him. It removed the ground. And only then, when the child was gone, the civilian was gone, the crown was gone, and the mother was gone, only then was Danny exactly where he needed to be, balanced on the edge. And that's when Lee could finally do what she was always there to do. Not guide him, not save him, but knock him off. A storm of snakes, a tidal wave of dogs, a volcanic eruption of universal divine intervention. What else would you send to knock down a fucking dragon? And the dragon falls. Not to die, but because this time, the fall itself is the lesson. And when a dragon falls, he doesn't fall gently. There is nothing graceful about it. No soft landing, no poetic glide. This is impact. It's smashing against the cliff face he's just been thrown from. Wings battering rock, ribs cracking, breath knocked clean out of him. Instinct kicks in hard and fast, because that's what dragons do. They fight gravity. They refuse descent. They claw, scrape, tear at the stone, trying to haul themselves back up to what they were. And that's the real danger. Every desperate grab tears something loose. Every attempt to climb back fractures bone. Every refusal to let go only deepens the wounds. Because the dragon isn't falling into nothing. He's falling between what was and what will be, between identity and absence, between certainty and the unknown. The fall is a punishment. It's transition. But dragons hate transition. They want ground. They want certainty. They want something solid beneath their claws. So he fights it. And in fighting it, he hurts himself more until the truth becomes unavoidable. Gravity can't be beaten. The cliff can't be reclaimed. And the only way through the fall is to stop trying to climb back into the past. And at times, brief fleeting moments, he got a grip, a handhold, a jut of stone, just enough friction to believe maybe he could stop the fall. But this wasn't hope. This was Zugzwang, that terrible elegant German truth from chess, the position where every possible move makes things worse, where staying still is losing and acting is losing faster. The dragon would cling there, muscles burning, mind racing, calculating angles, options, escapes, every instinct screaming to do something, anything. But philosophy has always known what dragons learn the hard way. There are moments where agency becomes the trap, where choice itself is the enemy, where control is the illusion that deepens the fall. Zugzwang isn't checkmate, it's the step before it. The realization that the board has already been decided, not by weakness, but by inevitability. So every time Danny tightened his grip, the stone gave way. Every time he tried to climb, the cliff took payment in blood. Because this fall wasn't asking for strategy. It wasn't asking for strength. It wasn't asking for brilliance. It was asking for surrender to motion. Surrender is defeat, but surrender is wisdom, the ancient kind, the kind that understands that sometimes the only winning move is to stop pretending you can still play the same game. This wasn't motion into chaos. This wasn't escape. This wasn't running. Dragons don't run from chaos. They run toward it. They understand it. They burn inside it. Chaos is familiar ground. This was different. This was motion without control, not strategy, not conquest, not domination. This was gravity, and Danny wasn't ready for that. Because even now, wings torn, ribs shattered, blood slicking the rock, he still believed he could win. He still believed there was a way back up, back to the top of the cliff, back to the board, back to the position where effort meant something and strength counted. He clung to the ledge like belief itself was a muscle. If he could just pull hard enough, think fast enough, endure long enough, he told himself, even broken, I can climb. Even shattered, I can fight. And the storm answered him. Alcohol crashed into him like rogue waves. Not comfort, not relief, but blunt force. The absence of his mom circled overhead like scavenger birds. Seagulls and crows pecking at memory. Grief, unfinished sentences, not explanations yet. Just noise, just pressure, just the ache of something missing that hadn't fully landed. Still he held on, because dragon energy doesn't surrender easily. It doesn't lie down, it doesn't concede. When something blocks a dragon, it gets removed. A dragon doesn't negotiate with obstacles. It smashes them, breaks them down, grinds them into pieces if it has to. Dragons don't gently step aside. They are the kind of force that drags you into the kitchen, peels you with a potato peeler, slices you thin, grates what's left, and throws it into searing oil. Not out of cruelty, but because that's how transformation works. Heat, pressure, violence with purpose. That's how dragons have always survived. But this wasn't a wall. It wasn't an enemy. It wasn't a boundary to break. There was no road here, no direction, no structure, no opposition to conquer, just open air. And the most dangerous truth a dragon can ever face. Sometimes there is nothing left to fight, and the only thing holding you in pain is your refusal to let go. What you need to understand, and this matters, is that none of these forces are working for the same thing. They are not aligned. They are not unified. They are not collaborating. Karma isn't destiny. Destiny isn't fate. Fate isn't karma. They are separate mechanisms, running on different tracks, obeying different laws, answering to different clocks. There isn't one plan. There's a map layered, moving, folding in on itself. Everything is pushing. Everything is pulling, for different reasons, toward different outcomes. And the end game, unknown. That's the point. So while Danny is hanging from the cliff, slipping, grabbing, tumbling, wings torn, ribs cracked, body battered by gravity and storm, it isn't one force acting on him. It's many. Some pushing him forward, some preventing him from going back, some stripping away what no longer fits, some simply waiting for the conditions they require to exist. None of them are villains. None of them are saviors. They are conditions. Little movements setting up other little movements, so that something else later can finally enter the board and do its work. That's how this operates. And this is where you have to stop thinking like a human, because this isn't psychology in the usual sense. This isn't morality. This isn't motivation or intention or blame. This is cosmic mechanics. This is universe. This is myth. This is magic. This is the kind of system that only makes sense when you stop asking who's right and start asking what's being shaped. And if you've made it this far, if you're still reading, still following the pattern instead of fighting it, then chances are you're already starting to see it. So now look at what's actually happening to Danny. The dragon is still hanging onto the ledge, claws dug in, wings shredded, muscles screaming, still believing, stubbornly, almost beautifully, that the chess game can be won if only he can get back up to the board. That's the tragedy of it, because the players are no longer there. The board is no longer there. The game already ended, not in defeat, but in irrelevance. The dragon doesn't know that yet. And here's the split, the real one, because Danny is now living in two completely different worlds at the same time. Externally, he's in the aftermath, the shock wave, the chaos that follows a mother leaving the world without warning, the phone calls, the silences, the practicalities that feel obscene in their normality, life continuing when it absolutely shouldn't. And internally, something unprecedented is happening. For the first time in his life, Danny has structure. Not chaos pretending to be insight, not survival masquerading as strength, a system, a place he can retreat to, not to hide, but to observe. The ground level fortress exists now, the corridors, the chambers, the court, the library, the garden, all of it functioning, imperfectly, yes, but functioning. So while the dragon is clinging to the cliff in instinct and defiance, Danny, the observer, can step back inside and ask, what the fuck is actually happening? He doesn't have answers yet. He doesn't even know the right questions. But this time, he isn't drowning inside the chaos. He's standing inside it, watching it move around him. And that's new. That's dangerous. Because once a dragon can retreat, reflect, and still feel the pull of gravity, it's only a matter of time before he realizes something devastating. He isn't being punished. He isn't being tested. He's being repositioned, and the ledge he's clinging to, it was never meant to be climbed back from. It was only ever meant to teach him how to let go without disappearing. So here he is, grieving, searching for clarity, trying to understand something that refuses to be understood. On the surface, it looks like a shutdown. To some, it looks like volatility. To others, like collapse, explosion, and implosion happening at the same time. But what's really happening is far stranger. This is the first time internal reality and external reality are colliding head-on, without filters, without distance, without the old survival buffers doing their job. Danny can't regulate anymore, not the way he used to. The world outside is demanding responses, decisions, movement, presence. But inside, the mind fortress has become the only place that feels safe enough to stand still. And yet, even there, nothing is calm. The dragon is frozen on the cliff edge. The observer is pacing. He wanders the fortress without direction, without hierarchy, without command. He goes to the tavern first. Humor, deflection, bravado. Shrug it off, laugh it off. If it's funny, maybe it isn't fatal. But the laughter dies quickly. It always does. So he storms into the war rooms. Who do we fight? Who do we blame? Where's the enemy? Where do we point the rage at so it doesn't turn inward? But there is no enemy to face, no banner to burn, no army to charge. So he climbs Omnist Hill, desperate now, bargaining, pleading, demanding answers from gods he has trusted his whole life. Why this? Why now? What was the point of everything if it leads here? Faith trembles. Denial kicks in. He flees to the library, compulsively searching for logic, systems, explanations, meaning. If he can understand it, maybe he can fix it. If he can name it, maybe it won't swallow him whole. And for a moment, just a moment, it almost works. Then the weight returns, and without thinking, without choosing, he runs back to the garden, the only place that still feels breathable, because that's where her memory lives. Not as a person, not as a figure, not as a voice. She was never a character in the Mind Fortress. She was never placed in a tower room or a court seat. She was everywhere else. She was the framework, the mortar, the load-bearing beams. She was the reason the garden grew the way it did, the reason certain jokes landed and others never did, the reason some injustices triggered fury while others passed unnoticed. She shaped what he found funny, what he found intolerable, what made him stand up when staying silent would have been easier. She wasn't housed in the fortress. She was the cement. And that's the thing Danny is only just beginning to realize, devastatingly, slowly, painfully. When he built this mind fortress, long before he knew he was building anything at all, he may have laid the bricks himself, but it was ancestral cement that held it together, from his mom, from his dad, from everything they passed down without ever naming. And now one of those foundations is gone. Not removed, not replaced, not relocated, gone. Which means the structure doesn't collapse, not yet, but it shifts. Hairline fractures appear in places he didn't even know were load-bearing. And Danny isn't breaking because his mom died. He's breaking because part of what made the fortress stable has vanished. And for the first time in his life, he has to learn how to let the structure stand without her holding it together. That's not grief. That's reconstruction at the deepest possible level, and he hasn't even begun to understand what that will cost him.